Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session, the FutureWAN Summit session on network orchestration for managed branch services. We have a really exciting session today, and we are joined by two fabulous people from Anuta NCX. We have Kiran Sarupa, who is the Director of Marketing, and he's joined with Praveen Vengalam, who's a co-founder and VP of Engineering. Before we get started with the session, a few housekeeping things. We have a set of attachments that are available to download. So if you click on the attachment section of your webinar, you'll be able to click and download the session, download the slides and other material that come with the session. In addition to that, we have a peer insight survey. So for everybody who wants to participate in this survey, share their insights, about 11 questions. You'll get a copy of the survey in the end, and the results, of course, represent the opinions and the entries from all your peers in the networking field. And lastly, we have a lot of action going on Twitter with regards to the FutureWAN Summit, and every single day we're giving an Amazon echo to the people who are the most active tweeters or the people with the best tweets. So as you go through this session, please remember to tweet out either a screen capture or something interesting you've heard from the session with a hashtag FutureWAN. And with that, I want to turn it over to Kiran. Kiran?
Thank you, Lloyd. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Kiran Sarupa. I am a Director of Marketing with Anuta. I am joined by my colleague, Praveen. Praveen, could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, everyone. This is Praveen Vengalam. I am one of the co-founders and VP of Engineering at Anuta.
So, welcome to the event. We have a 20-25 minutes slides. We will quickly go through how the branch networks are going through a transformation. We will talk about managed branch services. In particular, we will talk about Anuta's NCX solution, and we will go through some of the customer deployments. Please feel free to ask your questions on the question panel. We have a team of experts on both business as well as technical related questions. And depending upon the time, we will try to cover as many questions as possible as well. So let's get right into it. When it comes to the branch networks, there's a big transformation going on. Everyone wants to reduce the WAN bandwidth expenses and improve the application performance. The managed branch services are offering a great opportunity for MSPs, but at the same time, they create lots of challenges because these managed enterprises, they have a variety of branch networks from multiple vendors. And some of them are using physical appliances, but some of them have moved on to the virtual, and some of them are looking into SD-WAN. And the solution has to scale to thousands of devices if you're an MSP. And all the while, you have to be able to ensure consistency, availability, and metrics for this heterogeneous infrastructure. When we look at the day-to-day activities of a network operator in a managed branch services deployment, there is a lot of manual processes, including deploying the CPE devices, making sure they connect to the corporate network, configuring various advanced features like security, quality of service, application policies, VPN, and things like that. And there is a lot of incremental operations, such as managing the access control list, configuring bandwidth policies, upgrading the software, dealing with any RMA of the devices. So all of these manual processes are directly affecting the OpEx for the MSPs. They are also delaying the time to market and making it extremely difficult to compete as well. All the while, your managed enterprise customers, they have lots and lots of demands on the branch infrastructure, And there's a lot of traffic that's going out to the internet for cloud-based solutions. So managed branch service operators are dealing with extreme demand, and yet they have to cut down their OPEX. So this is where Anuta's solution comes in. This is where an orchestrator solution comes in that introduces automation to reduce the cost and avoid any manual operations. Another important thing is that when you introduce automation and orchestration, you are introducing consistency across multiple deployments. In an MSP scenario, you can introduce different templates, a gold template, a silver template, or a bronze template, and you are able to have the consistent user experience regardless of the vendor devices. So we will go into more details like how the orchestrator helps the branch office deployments. When we look at the customer's requirements, specifically for the business needs, they are looking for standardization of the network services. They would like to introduce self-service, and the solution should be able to work with their current investment into the infrastructure. For MSPs, multi-tenancy is another important factor. You need to be able to separate control and visibility for different segments of tenants. What this means is any technology that comes into the MSP should be standards-based. It should be vendor neutral, and it should be easy to extend. So these are some of the expectations of any solutions that are coming into the MSP deployments. Very briefly about Anuta Networks, we are a 5-year-old company. We are based in Silicon Valley, and we have global operations, and we have global customers. We will go through some of the customer deployments shortly, but the solution is deployed in some of the Tier-1 MSPs worldwide. The main differentiator for the orchestrator is that we are a multi-vendor orchestrator. We support more than 35 different industry-leading vendors, and we support L2 to L7 network functions for both physical and virtual form factor. And the solution scales to thousands of devices and branch offices. Another unique advantage of the NCX platform is that it uses standards-based Yang modeling framework, so it can be easily extended and customized to various MSP deployments. This slide captures how the Anuta's NCX software fits into the overall ecosystem. You may have many different branch offices. You may have many campus networks, private cloud, public cloud. Anuta sits on top of your current infrastructure, and it automates network configurations. For today's discussion, we will focus exclusively on the branch deployments, but the technology that Anuta has built into the NCX can be applied to various network segments like campus infrastructure or data center as well. The NCX also includes a component called VNF Manager, which provides lifecycle management for virtual appliances like virtual routers, virtual firewalls, and virtual load balancers and WAN optimizers. The NCX integrates with MSP's self-service portals as well as systems and OSS BSS systems as well. So NCX is a pure software-only solution. You can deploy it on bare metal or on any virtualization of your choice, including VMware and KVM. Let's look at one of the customer experience when it comes to introducing automation. When you introduce automation, you cut down on the manual operations that saves you OPEX, but you also reduce the number of outages because you avoid any inconsistent configurations. You will also ensure that the policy is consistent across multiple branch deployments and multiple scenarios. So what that means is you are able to achieve as much as 90% ROI within 1 year. This is a small deployment we have done with our system integrator partner Wipro, and they have realized the ROI within 1 year. Now we will go into more details like how the product works and how the solution looks, and then we will go through the customer examples. So here is the final customer experience when you introduce a automation software like Anuta NCX. The MSP offers a self-service portal to various types of tenants. The tenant, like in this case, the top customer one, he can select whatever features he wants for his branch office. For example, if it's a full service branch where you have guest network and you have employees coming into it and you have vendors and they all need to connect to internet as well as corporate applications, they can choose a premium service from the MSP stack. That premium service will be translated into a logical diagram for Anuta NCX. And NCX will then convert that logical abstraction into the different commands, CLIs or APIs, to various vendor equipment. And it will push that configuration to hundreds of branch equipment. And you could have a very low-end CPE solution wherein, let's say it's a bank and it's an ATM branch or it's a kiosk machine. Then you probably don't need all kinds of services. Well, you can support such service as part of a MSP self-service portal as well. So we introduce self-service and you are able to customize to different tenants, and you can onboard hundreds of branches with that kind of policy within minutes. Using the orchestration software, you can define various service templates, and when a branch network, for example, dials back into the corporate network, it can download the policies from the automation software. In this particular instance, the service policy dictates about splitting the traffic across MPLS and internet and providing security, VPN, and quality of service. So NCX software can overlay the logical abstraction onto the entire physical infrastructure, including switches, firewalls, WAN optimizers, as well as routers. Because of this, you have a consistent way to configure multiple branch offices. You have the same configuration, same VLAN names, same VRF names, and things like that. And you will be able to scale to hundreds of branches within minutes. Apart from onboarding the branches, you can also use an orchestration software to implement incremental policy updates. So, for example, one of the use case is that you would like to restrict bandwidth for Netflix across all your branch offices or block Facebook during daytime. You can write such policies in the NCX server, which is a virtual appliance, and the server will then push this configuration to hundreds of branches. Again, it avoids the manual processes to configure incremental policy updates, and regardless of the vendor. So in some branches you have vendor 1, in other branch you have vendor 2, and these vendors may be using physical form factor or virtual form factor. You as a network operator does not have to work with the CLIs or APIs. You are working with an abstracted notion of the policy, and you configure it in the NCX server itself. So the orchestration software caters to various personas in the enterprise. a product manager can use the starter kit, we call it a service model, that comes with all the service logic for various use cases like L3 VPN, virtual CPE, SD-WAN. We provide starter kits for those use cases. Then the DevOps team work with the SDK. They will customize the deployment for your own workflow, for your own ticketing system. And once the service is packaged, it will be published to a self-service catalog, and it will be available for tenants to consume. When the tenants or line of business order a service, those service catalogs will be converted into the actual commands or APIs to the underlying infrastructure. Then the operations teams will continue to use the orchestration software to monitor interesting events and interesting data from this multi-vendor infrastructure. And they will be able to enforce SLAs for service assurance. Here is a high-level view of the product, NCX. Everything you see in blue color represents the NCX platform. It sits on top of your current physical, virtual, and SD-WAN infrastructure. It interfaces with existing software. It could be your image management, license management. You may have certificate management, IP address management, service assurance, service monitoring, syslog. So the NCX consumes information from these third-party softwares, and it will contribute information to them as well. The entire NCX platform is available as a REST API, and it can be integrated with the MSP's self-service portals and ticketing systems. NCX also has a self-service portal that is typically used in a proof of concept scenario where you can try out various service models. Now, if we look at the NCX platform itself, everything is driven through YANG models. YANG is a IETF standard with which you can describe the service policy at the abstract level. We store the YANG models in an external database, so it gives you availability as well as extensibility. And the device models are also developed in YANG. They communicate to the underlying infrastructure using CLI or XML or APIs. So you don't have to upgrade just for the sake of programmability. You can use your current infrastructure, and you are able to introduce self-service for your current infrastructure. This slide explains the YANG models in one more detail. As you can see here, we have separated the service logic from the underlying device models. So the service logic represents the network function chaining. So for example, when you onboard a user into your branch office, what are all the things that a network operator has to do? You probably has to configure some segmentation policies for him. You have to double check their identity and authentication policies. Then you have to configure their access control policies as to which applications they will have access. And then you probably also have to configure application level policies, like how much bandwidth you want to control, what kind of web security you want to implement for these users. So all of those things can be described in a YANG model. YANG is very similar to an XML language, and we have developed these YANG models out of the box. But at the same time, we realize that this model won't match the customer requirements 100%. So we give you the ability to customize these YANG models by using Python scripts to customize it for your own deployment. When you are writing this Python script, you don't worry about the underlying devices. You write it at an abstract level. The the abstraction is done at a normalized device model. The normalized device model will have constructs like create VLAN, create a VRF, create an ACL, or create a route statement. The concrete mappings will convert these abstract models into the actual commands, CLI or API, to various vendor devices. We support more than 35 different industry-leading vendors, and we have device adapters for 100 plus different platforms. The NCX comes with many service packages, including branch, campus, data center, MPLS VPN, and many other VPN varieties as well. Now we will look into the branch automation in particular, how the NCX software is used in a branch scenario. As I mentioned earlier, MSPs have a very complex requirement. They have some customers that are using very old devices or using physical CPEs, some customers that are using hybrid CPEs, some components in physical, but some are in virtual. And then there is a new trend towards virtual CPE, where you are packaging multiple virtual functions into an x86 box, as well as SD-WAN is also happening. So when you have to deal with such a complex deployment, you need an abstraction layer that gives you the separation between the policy and the underlying device semantics. So we have developed the service models that can automate configurations for many of the use cases that we identified on this slide. Things like L3 VPNs, MPLS VPN, application visibility, quality of service, any type of IPsec VPNs, certificate management, identity, authentication. We have developed the models for all of these various features. So you as a network admin will customize them depending upon your workflow and depending upon your ticketing systems. And then you can deploy these service models to hundreds of branches within minutes. And as I mentioned earlier, once the branches are up and running, you are able to automate incremental policy updates, such as changing the bandwidth policies, changing application policies, or creating or deleting users and VLANs and things like that. We also support day zero configuration and zero touch deployment for some of the CPE devices. That cuts down your manual operations as well. Now we are going to look at two different case studies. This is a Tier-1 MSP out of Asia. They have deployed NCX for CPE automation. The MSP caters to both small business as well as large enterprises. As you see in this diagram, they have deployed the NCX server in their data center, and they have dedicated agents for each of their tenant customers. If it's a small business, the agent also lives within the MSP's data center. But if it's a larger enterprise, the agent can be deployed closer to the enterprise, or it can be deployed in the enterprise private cloud as well. The agent does all the hard work of configuring the devices. It has the credentials to the devices, but the policy and tenancy information is all located in the server. In this particular scenario, they are using NCX for zero touch deployment as well as incremental policy updates. Apart from provisioning the services, NCX will also monitor the key performance indicators for these branch offices, and NCX can validate the SLAs. And if in case of any SLA violation, it can also take corrective actions such as shutting down ports or rerouting packets as well. They are currently in production, and they plan to raise to 100,000 CPEs within the next 2 to 3 years. Telstra is another managed service provider that have deployed NCX for their CPE automation. As you see in this diagram, they are using a lightweight virtual router on the CPE, but they move all the network functions such as identity, authentication, IPAM, service monitoring, performance monitoring. All of that will be managed within the Telstra's data center. And they have dedicated a virtual appliance, ArcSight virtual machine, for each tenant, so it can provide monitoring information dedicated to each tenant. And they have used NCX for orchestrating the data center portion, where you are carving out virtual resources for each tenant, as well as CPE onboarding and automation. So in this particular scenario, NCX integrates with multiple vendors like Infoblox for IPAM, Cisco for authentication, and VMware for server automation, as well as HP ArcSight for monitoring. And again, all of this is done using Yang models that are out of the box of NCX, but they can be customized for example, Telstra's requirements. This is another Tier-1 MSP. In this case, they want to build a CPE, a virtual CPE, by using KVM hypervisor and installing the OpenStack. And they are combining a virtual router, a virtual firewall, as well as virtual WAN optimization to offer it as a packaged CPE solution to their end customer. Again, they are using the NCX to package the CPE, to onboard the CPE devices, and provide incremental configuration updates. So that we reach the end of the presentation. As I mentioned, Network Orchestrator provides the abstraction that you need for a hybrid infrastructure in MSP deployments. NCX offers Yang-based service models and device models for various use cases. It avoids any human errors, and it introduces consistency across multiple branches. And ultimately, you are able to reduce OpEx as you are making better use of your bandwidth and cutting down on your manual operation. So I will stop now, and let's take some of the questions. Okay, Praveen, there is one question here. Do we need the agent for small deployments?
Yeah, agent is typically recommended for any production deployment, server agent, because it just gives fault isolation. And especially if it is a large MSP where we typically expect more than one MSP tenant, right? So it provides like a horizontal scale, and that's our typical deployment model. And if it is a small enterprise where it's a orchestration for the enterprise only, we do support a single VM-based deployment model where server and agent can be packaged together. But in a fairly large deployment, we recommend server agent model.
Thank you, Praveen. I have one more question here. You said you support 35 different vendors. Is there a list?
Yeah, we must have that list up on our website. And also, Kiran, if you have the slides handy, you can share that as well.
Okay. I do not have the slide handy, Praveen, today, but listeners, you can go to our website, and we have documented all the various vendors and the different platforms that are supported from each vendor as well. Okay, Praveen, I do not see any other questions, so we will wait a couple of minutes, and otherwise we can wrap up the session today.
Okay.
Praveen, there is one question. Does Anuta support Viptela for orchestration? Do you support physical and virtual edges?
This is something that we are actively looking into. We have some common customers where this is being looked into. We should have an update on this shortly on our portal.
So another comment, broadband aggregation will play a big role in this space. What do you think?
So I don't follow the question quite well. Probably the question is pointing to the WAN side of consolidation. If that is the case, quite a few customers that have been traditionally using the MPLS or the private WAN would move to a more business internet kind of scenarios. That is definitely going to happen. We see the transition happening already. And how many of them migrate, how soon they migrate, that's time will tell.
So that looks like we are out of questions. Feel free to ask us. We'll still be online, and you can also reach out to us through our website, anutanetworks.com. And as Lloyd mentioned earlier, we have attached some of the white papers and data sheets, so you can have one more look at them.
There's
Praveen,
one more question.
One more. Yeah, let me read that for you. Okay. Does Anuta support zero-touch deployment? Does the agent have to be installed on the CPE or virtual CPE, or are you integrating directly with the vendors?
So agent is the agent deployment model is outside of the network element. We don't embed any software on the network element directly. So the way the agent works is pretty much sitting outside on a virtual machine, or probably in the data center, and working with multiple physical or virtual CPs, and it is doing collection and provisioning job. Other than that, it doesn't have a direct install footprint on the CPE itself. And the way ZTD works in our case is we expect the plug and play from the CPE itself to kind of come and register into the head end, and from there we take it over once the registration happens. We also have some deployment models where customers have used a call home script that is custom developed for that MSP for their customers, and that call home script calls into a REST API into the NCX server on the head end within the MSP data center, and that call flow is also supported. And all of this is again done using the Yang modeling infrastructure. MSP is free to go and define any call home infrastructure that they wish, and that is something that they can standardize within their environment.
Thank you.